Prague, 1890. The city where time stacks on itself like sediment. You're standing in a place that doesn't know whether it's still medieval or already modern. Electric trams hum past Gothic spires. Steam engines choke the river where kings once crossed. And somewhere in these streets, your ancestors, Czech, German, Jewish, are trying to figure out which century they're living in. This is Prague before it became the postcard, before the tourists, before the wars erased whole neighborhoods. Let me show you what they saw. By 1890, Prague holds nearly 400,000 souls packed into a city designed for 50,000. The Habsburgs still rule from Vienna, but Czech nationalism is rising like floodwater. The Jewish quarter, Josefov, is about to be demolished in the name of hygiene and progress. Factories are transforming the riverfront, and every single street is thick with language politics. Czech versus German, old versus new, tradition versus industry. The air smells like coal smoke, horse manure, roasting coffee, and something older, stone dust from buildings that have been standing since the 1200s. Old Town Square is the heart that never stops beating. The teen church towers loom over you like medieval sentries, their Gothic spires black against the sky. Below them, wooden market stalls crowd the cobblestones. Women in long skirts haggle over cabbages and bread. A horse-drawn cart sits frozen, waiting for a buyer. Men in bowler hats and wool suits move through the crowd with newspapers tucked under their arms. This is where executions happened, where revolutions sparked, where the astronomical clock still ticks off the hours like it has since 1410. If you were born here, this square defined your sense of what normal looked like, the asymmetry of those towers, the density of bodies, the fact that every stone has been walked on by 20 generations before you. 4:30 in the morning. Charles Bridge before the city wakes. The stone is cold under your feet. 30 Baroque statues line both sides, their shadows stretching across the cobblestones as pale light bleeds in from the east. A priest in black robes crosses toward the old town. A woman with a basket heads to market. Workers carrying tools begin their day. The Vltava below is flat and gray, reflecting nothing. This bridge has stood here since 1397. It survived wars, floods, and the weight of every grudge this city has ever held. If you walked it every morning for 60 years, you'd wear a groove into the stone, just like the thousands who came before. Now we slip into the lanes they're about to erase. Josefov, the Jewish quarter. Medieval alleys so narrow, you can touch both walls at once. Buildings lean inward, blocking the sky. Laundry lines stretch overhead. The smell is dense, cooking, bodies, damp stone, centuries of compressed life. An elderly man stands in a doorway, watching. A woman carries a bundle through the gloom. Children play in the drainage channel that runs down the center of the alley. Within 10 years, most of this will be gone, cleared in the name of sanitation. The city will call it progress and build wide boulevards where these lanes once were. But right now, in 1894, this is still home to 10,000 people who have nowhere else to go. Someone like you lived here, every day, knew every worn step, every cracked doorway, every neighbor's voice. Walk uphill now, toward the future. Wenceslas Square is where Prague tries to convince itself it's modern. The boulevard stretches wide, lined with Art Nouveau facades in cream and pale yellow. Electric streetcars glide along the tracks. Men in suits and women in Edwardian hats promenade like they're in Paris or Vienna. At the top of the square, the National Museum rises like a promise, or a threat, depending on whether you're Czech or Austrian. This is the street where nationalism goes shopping, where political speeches happen, where the 20th century is rehearsing its entrance. But look closer. The cobblestones are still uneven. The tram wires sag. And most of the people here can't afford what's in those shop windows. Up on the hill, power looks the same as it has for centuries. Prague Castle, third courtyard, the seat of Habsburg authority in Bohemia. Guards in ceremonial uniforms stand at attention. Church officials in black robes cross the courtyard. St. Vitus Cathedral looms behind them, still incomplete after 500 years of construction. Scaffolding still clings to the south tower. This is where the empire reminds you who's in charge. The stone is formal, cold, arranged with geometric precision. Every arch, every column, every statue is a sentence in the grammar of control. If you were Czech and nationalist, this place was a daily insult. If you were loyal to Vienna, it was the natural order of things. Either way, you couldn't ignore it. But here's the thing about 1891. Prague builds its own Eiffel Tower. The Petrin, lookout tower. Steel lattice rising from the forested hillside. It's shorter than the Paris original, but it's ours, the Czechs say. A statement in iron that we can be modern too. You climb the spiral staircase, 60 meters up, and suddenly you see the whole city laid out below. The castle, the river, the bridge, the spires, the factory smoke, all of it compressed into one panorama. People come here in their Sunday best. Women with parasols, men with cameras. It's optimism made visible. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, the new century will belong to us. Down at the waterfront, optimism smells like coal. The Vltava is lined with brick warehouses and loading cranes. Coal barges and timber rafts tie up at the stone embankment. Smokestacks exhale black plumes that hang in the air like permanent clouds. Dock workers haul sacks on their backs. Horses pull carts loaded with goods from factories you can hear clanging in the distance. This is the real engine of modern Prague. Not the castle. Not the square. This. The men who work here go home with soot in their lungs. The river runs gray with industrial runoff. The noise never stops. Steam whistles, hammers on metal, shouted orders in 3 languages. If you were poor, this was your street, your shift, your daily wage calculated in cuts and bruises. But culture fights back. The National Theater, rebuilt after a fire in 1883, stands on the river with its golden roof gleaming. Every brick, every gilded detail was paid for by public donations. Peasants gave coins. Workers gave what they could. It was built with collective defiance. Inside, Czech plays are performed in the Czech language, an act of resistance when Vienna still expects German to dominate. The building itself is a statement. We exist. We have a culture. You cannot erase us. On a summer evening, couples stroll the riverside promenade. Carriages pull up. The city dresses itself in finery and pretends, for a few hours, that beauty still matters more than coal. Walk back toward the old city through the Powder Tower Gateway. This Gothic structure from 1475 marks the entrance to the royal route, the path kings once took to their coronations. The stone is blackened from centuries of weather and soot. The archway opens like a throat between the medieval core and the modern expansion beyond. You stand in the passage, cobblestones worn smooth under your feet, and you can feel it. Time layering. The coronation processions, the sieges, the revolutions. And now, in 1900, just people, vendors, pedestrians, horse carts. Daily life wearing down the ceremonial. This is the threshold, the place where history becomes routine. Step inside Café Louvre and the noise changes. Marble-topped tables, bentwood chairs, waiters in white aprons gliding between conversations, newspapers mounted on wooden holders. Cigar smoke hangs in the upper air like a weather system. This is where Czech intellectuals argue nationalism over coffee, where students debate philosophy, where writers scribble in notebooks. The mirrors on the walls reflect the scene. back on itself, doubling the intensity. If you had ambitions beyond the factory or the tenement, this is where you came to feel them out loud, to test your ideas against someone else's, to convince yourself that words could still change the world. Someone sitting 3 tables over might write the speech that sparks the next demonstration, or might just go home and forget everything they said tonight. But most people never make it to the cafe. Out in Nusla, the working-class tenement district, life happens in cramped brick courtyards. Multi-family buildings rise 4 stories around a central space where women gather at the shared water pump. Laundry hangs between balconies. Children play in the worn cobblestones. A man in a worker's cap sits on the steps, too tired to move. The walls are crumbling. The plaster shows brick underneath. Soot from coal stoves streaks the facades black. This is where factory workers live, where families crowd into single rooms, where disease spreads fast and life expectancy is 20 years shorter than up on the hill. If you were born poor here, this courtyard was your world. These neighbors knew your business. These walls heard your fights, your births, your grief. Your great-grandparents might have lived here, might have pumped that water, hung that laundry, died young. And then the way out. Franz Josef Railway Station, the glass-roofed cathedral of departure. Steam locomotives hiss at the platforms. Passengers in every social class mix in the crowd. Peasants with wooden trunks. Bourgeois travelers with leather cases, workers heading to jobs in distant cities. The iron framework overhead catches the light. The clock on the platform column shows the exact minute. The smell is coal smoke, oil, and possibility.
This is the portal, the place where Prague connects to Vienna, Berlin, Moscow, Paris, where the old world meets the rail network of the new, where you can leave, if you have the fare. Some people board the train and never come back. Some return and find the city changed beyond recognition. Some just stand on the platform and imagine going. The whistle blows. The train pulls out, trailing white steam that rises and dissipates into nothing. Within 30 years, everything changes. World War I shatters the Habsburg Empire. Czechoslovakia is born. The Jewish quarter is already gone, replaced by Art Nouveau boulevards. The factories multiply. The city swells beyond its medieval core. But if you walked those streets between 1890 and 1910, you saw the hinge moment. The instant when the medieval city and the modern world stood side by side, staring at each other, unsure which one would win. Turns out they both lost, and something new took their place. Which city should we time travel to next? Drop your suggestions below. And if you've walked these streets, tell me what I missed.